It is great to hear the word of God, isn't it? Now, today I'm going to do something a little bit rogue, a little bit, crazy and different. I'm going to preach the Bible passage. I'm going to tie it to kind of what it means for us to live that out as a people of God with our vision, and then think about how it applies to our lives. I know, crazy and very different to what we normally do every single week. But I thought this week, why not? Let's just see what God might do when we preach the Bible. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Now, here's the plan. We're going to look at Acts 17 this little bit, and we're going to walk through this. And Paul is in Athens, and I think Athens is about as close to 21st century Southampton as we find in the Bible. I think it's pretty similar, okay? Now, some of you will have heard a little bit of this before, but not all of it. So you can stick with me. If you're part of our wider leadership team, I talked a bit about this. And so when I say the next bit, some of it will make sense. Because as we look through Acts 17, along the way, I want to talk to us about surfing and how the color blue could just change someone that you know and love's life this year. Easy, right? So we're going to go surfing in the deep blue in Athens. That's what we're going to do this morning. I want to pray for us. We've prayed a lot this morning, but prayer is the greatest thing we get to do. So let me pray. Father, I want to pray that this morning, as we look at this passage from your word, you'll make it live for us. Lord Jesus, that it won't just be an ancient text, but it will be a contemporary reality for us in our day. Lord Jesus, that as we sit under your word, I pray that you'll help me to bring it to us in a way that will change us both this morning, but will change us for a lifetime to come, and will bring many to you. In your name, for your glory. Amen. Amen. Okay, so if you've got it in front of you, that will help you, but bits and pieces will come up on the screen as well. In verse 16, we're told then that Paul, who's going around all these different places, he is greatly distressed that the city was full of idols. Now, we don't really use idol language today, do we? We don't talk about idols a great deal. There's a guy called Tim Keller. He's a brilliant thinker. I would read all of his books. He is brilliant. And he's a pastor in New York and thinks a lot about church planting. And so he thinks about what are cities like. That's what he spends a lot of his time doing. And he talks about idols in our day-to-day. And we kind of need to think about them, because otherwise we just put things like this and these kind of words in a box that says strange stuff that happened in history. And that's not what we need to do with the Bible. What we need to do is think, okay, what does this mean? So Tim Keller says it like this. He says, an idol is whatever you look at and say in your heart of hearts, if I have that, then I'll feel my life has meaning. Then I'll know I'll have value. Then I'll feel significant and secure. So we might not use the language of an idol, but we definitely have the problem of that, don't we? We see it all around us all the time. You see, if that thing that we think will make me significant and secure and it'll give me value, if that thing is anything other than the living God that we've been singing about this morning, it's an idol. Since actually God is the only one who can give us meaning. He's the only one who gives us true value that's not based on our own merit, how well we do, how good we are. He's the only one who can actually make us significant and secure. Because, well, he made us and he gets to say so. But the problem with idols is, and we all know this only too well, is often they don't start out as idols, do they? We don't go out on our day-to-day and we go, I'm going to choose a new idol today. I'm going to give my life to something that will probably end up ruining it. We don't choose to do that. Who would do that? But you see, an idol starts out and it promises us so much. It promises us that we're going to have those things like significance and security and value. And sometimes an idol is overt and it's noisy and it pushes its way into our lives, making us believe that actually we need it in our lives to have the life we want, or the life maybe we deserve. Maybe it's things like we're promised a better body or a better car or a better house or a better bank balance, maybe better relationship. It's noisy and it pushes its way and says, you should have me. But then other times, idols end up being a bit more covert, a bit more quiet, almost silent, just whispering to us that we deserve better. That maybe we're better than them, and this is the thing that will give us that we're right, and other people just can't see it. That actually maybe somehow this God is holding out on us, and actually we need to take things into our own hands and make it ours because, well, we deserve it. We'll just go right ahead and take it. You see, every time an idol promises so much and yet delivers so little. In fact, over time, an idol will always enslave us and eventually will lead us to death. John Piper, who's another pastor in America, he uses this little phrase, and it came originally, I think, from the Puritans, and they said, the deadening effect of innocent delights. Innocent delights, just another series on Netflix or Apple TV, just another thing that we need in our kitchen, just another set of friends who, once we've kind of infiltrated that group, like at the school gate, then we'll have made it. And before we know it, these things that we either invite in or that just creep into our lives, they have this deadening effect on our soul. They deaden us to the things of God because we're looking somewhere else for that significance and that security and that value. You see, they deaden us to God's place in our lives to the point where actually we end up worshipping these other things with our time, or with our energy, or with our thoughts, or our money, or our devotion. Paul was greatly distressed because the city of Athens was full of idols. The city of Southampton is full of idols. And idols leave the heart dead. And so what's Paul's response? As we look through here, Paul decides, well, I'm not dead. I'm alive. And I've got something that I can bring to this dead city around me. And so he goes to the city as one who is alive. Did you notice? He goes to the synagogue and he goes to the marketplace. It says he goes to the Jews and the Greeks, which is it's Bible language for saying he goes to everyone. There's only Jews or Greeks. There is no other category. That's kind of what he's talking about here. And he talks to all those who happened to be there. Do you have those people? Who just kind of happen to be there. I have those people in my life. They just happen to be there every morning I wake up. I call them my wife and my children. And, they just happen to be there every morning. And when I put my bins out on a Wednesday evening, John next door happens to be there. Usually waiting until I've done mine because they moved in after us and they're still trying to catch up on, which bin day it is. And then imagine it's the same when you go to work, and your boss just happens to be there every time. Or maybe not, and that's, another issue. But your team or that person at the bus stop when you go to work on a Tuesday, they happen to be there, or the coffee shop that you go to, or that checkout worker who does the 8 till 2 when you do your shopping, or maybe they do 4 till close on a Thursday, which is when you manage to get there. They all just happen to be there, don't they? It's amazing what happens when you think actually that God has appointed the times and the places for each and every one of us. There's nothing that happens by accident. In fact, everything we know from Scripture happens on purpose. God ordains every single moment of every single life. You see, they don't just happen to be there, and nor do you. It's a strange thought, isn't it, that God appoints and determines the times when you might go to Lidl. But that's what we see. You see, everything happens on purpose, and if it happens on purpose, then it has purpose. And that's what Paul lives in. He lives it out. We see it throughout his entire life. We see him living it out on purpose and with purpose. And so who happens to be there in your marketplace, in your day by day? Who are those people that happen to be there at school or at college or at work or just in your house, nearby? Who happens to be there? Because if you notice what happens next, these people who Paul's been talking to, they invite him in. So first he's gone to them, and then they say, come to the Areopagus. I actually preferred the way Neve said it. It sounded much more posh. I like that. But they invite him in because they want to hear more. They want to see something more of this guy who seems to be bringing something different to this city full of idols. This kind of just stench of death that hangs around because everyone's following something, but no one seems to be alive. And then there's this guy. And the others like him, and so they want to hear him. They want to hear more. I want us to think about what it's like for us to live like this. Because Paul and his other folk who were doing the same thing at the same time, the apostles, changed the face of the world. They changed everything. In the power of the Spirit, through the message of Jesus Christ, they changed everything. And I still think that can happen. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing what we're doing. There'd be another way. But you see, Paul is invited in, and it starts with whoever happens to be there, but you never know what that might lead to. Now, I'm not going to preach Paul's sermon from the Areopagus today. You can find loads of other really good sermons on that. I think Chris has written a book that includes a lot of like how Paul does that. It's called Equipped. You can get it and you get him to sign it. But you see, what Paul cannot help him do is talk about the good news of Jesus and the resurrection. That's what we see in this passage. That's what we find that he is doing. And you might have noticed, if you've been around at Life Church for a little while, we do that a lot too. We talk a lot about Jesus and we talk a lot about his resurrection. And I've kind of already hinted at it, but here's the reason. It has changed everything for me. And it's changed everything, I know, for lots of you. And trust me, as soon as we find something better, we'll talk about that. But I don't think we will. In fact, I'm convinced that we won't. And so we're going to stick with this message, because for the last 2,000 years, no one's found anything better. And so Jesus Christ and his resurrection is the good news, the gospel, which means good news. It is the best thing we have. And there are lots of other things that people can proclaim loud and clear and with all sorts of fancy social media and videos and wonderful advertising techniques, but it is not good news. Not like this. This is good news. You see, these other things, these things that creep in, they're not good news. Not ultimately. They might be all right for a bit. They might satisfy for a moment, but not for long. Not forever. But Jesus Christ and his resurrection, that is good news. And that is the thing that we have been given. Now look, here's why this is good news. Because we are prone to putting these idols that promise to be like God to us as the first thing in our hearts. And as we've already explored, they kill us. So why would we do that? And yet, even us who know the good news, many of us still manage to do it regularly, don't we? We put something else in place of God. The Bible explains that actually, before we come to know Christ, we are dead. We're already dead, spiritually speaking. There's a flat line on the ECG. There's nothing. There's no signs of life whatsoever. But then Jesus comes along and he steps down into our mess. And he steps into our humanity, and despite never sinning, despite never doing, saying, thinking anything wrong, and at the same time, not just not getting it wrong, he simultaneously chose to do everything that is right. He chooses to take that death. Where we were once dead, he steps in and goes, I'll take that, and you can have what I've got. This perfect life that he lived, given in our place, is the good news. You see, then he says, not only am I going to take your place, I'm going to come back to life, and you are coming with me. What an incredible Savior. What incredible news. He took on everything that is wrong with you and gave you everything that is right with him. And he gives you new life. Now, maybe that's good new news to you. Maybe you've never really heard that before. But for someone who's dead, life is good news, right? Like, it doesn't get more stark than that. It's not like a small self-improvement. It's not like a little bit of self-help. This is fundamental change of the very core of who you are. Jesus Christ is good news. You see, it's good news if you've never heard that before. Maybe that's you today. And if that is, I would love to chat to you about it afterwards. But maybe it's good news as well for those of us who've heard it hundreds of times before, isn't it? Because these things creep in that deaden us to the things of God, and Jesus is about bringing life every single time. And so if you feel like just a bit dull, like a bit spiritually, like just things are a bit of a struggle, come to Jesus, because he is the one that brings us to life, and life in all of its fullness. And he's already done absolutely everything that is necessary. We can draw near to him, and he promises to draw near to us, like Chris said at the very outset, and he will give us life. It is good news. In fact, it's such good news that the team and I at Life Church have been thinking a lot about the fact that this good news is worth sharing. And it's worth living out in our lives because it's the best. And if it's news that's worth sharing, then it's worth sharing it well, isn't it? It's worth thinking about sharing this well. And the Bible calls it evangelism, which literally just means telling the good news. And we've been thinking about how, as a church, we can get even better at this. Because much as I love you lot, I'd love to see a whole load of other people in here. Wouldn't you? Like in that bit in the middle, where no one likes to sit. Like you lot all get squished in from the ends because there's all new people sat where you are. Wouldn't that be brilliant? Because there's a whole world out there in this city full of idols that are dead. And we know the thing that brings life. It's good news. And so there's loads of ways we could do it. But you see, I think life is a bit more complex than just like all of us now running out into the street and just shouting about it. I don't think that's actually what the Bible often talks about in terms of evangelism. I'm not saying we can't do it, but I don't think it's necessarily the best way to reach our city full of idols. You see, Paul, in this bit, when he speaks at the Areopagus, he really, really thinks about what he's doing. You should look up how he does this, because it's brilliant, and he is a master at it. But he's really thinking about how he shares the good news, and I would love us to be the same. And now we're going to talk about surfing. Stick with me. See, I've been surfing a handful of times in my life, and you can see some pictures here. This is in our younger years. This is me and Joe before we were even married. This is about 15 years ago. Isn't that beautiful? In our tight wetsuits. Someone did suggest I could wear a wetsuit today, and as I did the message, just sort of decided that would be completely inappropriate. So that's me and Joe, and then down here, this is me and Aussie Darren, who was our surf instructor, and as you can see, I did reach out and smacked him on the bum because I thought that would be funny, and then I fell off my board. And it was funny. But when you're starting out surfing, this is what surfers do, by the way. That's what we do. If you didn't know, that's the kind of stuff that cool people who surf do, because I've been 3 times. But I did get up on the board, like you can see. Now, when you're starting out, there's lots of stuff like on the beach, preparing, thinking about how you're going to start. But when you actually get out in the water, you lie on your board, and the instructor just puts you into a wave, and then just pushes you, and you go woo, and you're like, yes, I'm kind of surfing, and it's great fun. And then you start to get your balance on the board, and gradually they just take you out a little bit deeper, and then you learn to paddle with the wave. And then you ride that wave in, and then you start to learn to pop up on your board, and you start to surf these waves in until you go out deeper and deeper, until actually you're seemingly just sat in the water beyond the waves. You're not doing the stuff that you were doing to start with. You're just that little bit further out. And what you're doing, you look out and you see where the conditions are, and you see that the swell is just starting to come up, and you start to read the waves. And then you think, there's one coming. And so you sort of twist round, and then you get on your board, and you're like, is this the one? And then no, it's not that one. I thought it was going to be this one. And then you turn around again, and everyone's sitting around, and then basically when you're learning, you just watch Darren. But then you start to learn how to do it yourself, and then he leaves you alone and goes and helps some other people. And then you start to learn, and you start to paddle to get the waves. And then you paddle like crazy, and then you hit the wave, and you ride it in, and you just feel really cool. And then you come in, stand on a weaver fish, and it all gets really horrible, and we'll talk about that another time. But the reality is that surfers actually spend more time waiting in the water than they do actually riding the waves. But they're still surfing. That is surfing. Surfing is not just the bit when it's all happening. You see, that's the thing for us surfers. We learn to read the waves, and we learn to learn the conditions when we look for the right wave to catch, but it's all surfing. Now, I think evangelism can be a lot like surfing. I think evangelism should be a lot like surfing. See, I think to start out with, for lots of people around us, it's like if we're open to the opportunities, then God just is really kind to us, and he helps us, and he nudges us in the right direction, and he nudges the people around us in the right direction. It's like they're just lying on their board, waiting for that wave, and all we just kind of do is, and they ride the wave. And God draws them nearer to himself, and he does incredible things. And then maybe as we're kind to people, and they ride that wave of God just drawing them near to them, he does something through our witness, and something propels them towards God. We like to think it's us, and I think we have a part to play, but it's mostly him. And then something maybe next time they have a crisis in life, or they're facing something tough, and maybe they come to you because you showed them kindness, and you say, well, I can pray for you. And they ride the wave. And God draws them near to him. Maybe next time you say, I could pray with you even, not just for you. Outrageous. And then they ride the wave. And God just draws them that little bit nearer to him. And you see, maybe each time they come a little bit deeper. Their feet are still on the floor maybe to start with, and then God just draws them closer. Maybe they come to a carol service, like in a church. I know we meet in a school, but it's still a church. And it's a little bit deeper still, and they feel a little bit out of their depth now. But again, they sense something of God just drawing them near to him, and they ride that wave. Maybe they don't. Maybe that's not the wave that time. Maybe it wasn't the carol service. But they're surfing, and you're surfing alongside them, and we're all in that water together. You see, everybody you know is somewhere in the ocean, just waiting to catch a wave, just waiting for God to draw them near to himself. Because waves are sure to roll in on the coastline day after day after day after day. And just as sure as waves roll in on a coastline, God is drawing people to himself. Just think for a moment right now of somewhere where you know that you can picture of those waves that are rolling in. They haven't stopped because you're here. They haven't stopped because you're doing something else and you're not thinking about being at the beach. The waves are still rolling in. And in the same way, just as you've not thought about that friend that you invited or talked to Jesus about all those years ago, God is still drawing them to himself. He's still at work. He's still doing his thing. And you see, we can be sure, just as we can be sure that waves are going to rise in white crests and roll in and break on the shoreline, we can be sure that when we share the gospel, people will find faith in Christ. Because it's good news. And it's effective in and of itself. It's not about how you do it. It is about whether you do it. But it is the power of God at work in his good news. But you see, it's not down to the surfer to create waves, is it? It's not down to the surfer to decide when they break. It's not down to the surfer to make them rise. It's not our job to make people Christians. It's not our job to make them change. It's not our job to decide when either. God is drawing them to himself. So just hold this idea of surfing for a moment. We're going to come back to that, but I want you to have that in your mind because I want us to see what happens when Paul starts sharing this good news about Jesus Christ and the resurrection. So we're in verse 32. It says, when they heard about the resurrection of the dead, some of them sneered, but others said, we want to hear you again on this subject. So we see Paul leaves that place where they're based, and what happens in the next verse or two is that those who wanted, I think, to come and hear, eventually they do. They come a little bit nearer until eventually some of them believe. We see a couple of names here. So verse 33, at that Paul left the council. Some of the people became followers of Paul and believed in Jesus, that is. Paul was not about getting followers for him. He said, follow me as I follow Christ. He was leading people to Jesus. Among them was named Dionysius, a member of the Areopagus, also a woman named Damaris, and a number of others. Just trace this through for a moment. Paul's got into this city. It's full of idols. It's an absolute mess. And he resolves, I'm going to share the good news with the people who happen to be there. And then he finds an open door into the Areopagus, which happens to be like the highest place of thinking and learning in Athens. But some of them want to hear, and then some of them come near. It seems simple, doesn't it? When we look at it just in that little frame, but he was there for a while. But you see, this is the thing with telling people that their life is worth Jesus dying for them. That's the kind of the value call Jesus made. He looked at every life that was ever going to be and he said, yeah, they're worth it. And when we tell people that, it creates a reaction. It makes people feel something. And you see, we're not in control of whether that message is received wonderfully. We're not in control of whether people receive it with a sneer, like some of these people. What? Rubbish. We're not actually in control of whether other people say, I want to hear a bit more about this. Nor are we in control of whether people want to come near and actually get close to God. And we've already heard today, haven't we, what happens when people draw near to God? See, our only bit is to share it with them. And we can trust that God is at work as people move from maybe being a sneerer to a hearer, and they move from being hearer to going nearer. And when they come near to God, incredible things happen. Lives changed. And that's the case for most of us here. We came near to God and everything changed. I want you to imagine for a moment a friend or a family member or a colleague who is not yet a Christian. Just picture someone in your head. Have somebody that you can think of that you know who does not yet know Jesus. And just have them in your mind for a moment. And maybe even this is you right now, this morning, and you wouldn't say that you've put your trust in Jesus and exchanged all of your mess for all of his perfection. But I want you to just imagine this person for a moment. I'm going to call this person Jay, because it works either way around. And I want you to take this journey for a moment, a bit like Paul does with the people in Acts 17. So maybe they're already past this first step. If we put up the little blue thing. I know it's all blue. That wasn't very helpful, was it? That thing. Now, some people maybe are past the first step of this because they already know you, because you know them, because they've just come into your mind. But for a lot of people, they are wandering in this world. They're just looking at the world around them. They're looking at the situations they find themselves in, and they go, I wonder if there is something more. And then maybe some other people are thinking things like Jay. I'm thinking, I don't know any Christians. Well, now, maybe that's fine. Maybe that doesn't bother them. Maybe they're having these thoughts about what life's really all about, and the thought of God has kind of popped into their head a few times, but they've got nowhere to land that. They've got nothing to do with that in terms of like a concept, and so they just sort of maybe float around. But then you pop up in their life, and you work with them, or you go for a walk with them, or you go to the pub with them, and you've gone for a walk on the common, and then you end up at the Belmore, and you bump into me. And you go, oh, hey, Si. And I say, oh, hi, how are you? And you go, oh, this is Jay. And I go, hi, nice to meet you. And then I carry on with my day. And so do you. But now Jay has met both you and me. And in that moment, we change things. Imagine for a moment that the entire world is white. Everything's white, just the color white. And God is blue. Okay? Just imagine that for a moment. And this moment, this encounter between us at the pub is a very, very light shade of blue compared with the rest of the world. Because you're a Christian carrying the light of Jesus in your life, and so am I. And imagine that thing is blue. The white in that little space, in that little moment, just turns a very, very light shade of blue, doesn't it? Just happened to be there. It's amazing what happens when you just happen to be in the places you are. And so imagine then, if that's the lightest blue, imagine maybe like one of our prayer meetings on a Wednesday night, or a worship time in one of our life groups, like an overflow worship time. And we're not really thinking we're going to make this super accessible to people who might not yet be Christians. Imagine that's the deepest blue that you can think of. Maybe like the chairs you're sitting on right now. That's like really dark blue. It's super God. Like it's a holy kind of moment, right? And we're not necessarily thinking about that. That's the kind of scale that we're going on here, all right? So that's the journey we're on. Now, your interaction at the pub is the lighter shade of blue, but now maybe Jay's thinking, I'm sure you said you knew Si from church. Does that mean you go to church like all the time? Like every week? Like a fundamentalist? Or a Christian? And maybe they think like their only other experience of Christians is like that neighbor that they knew when they were growing up, and they thought, do you know what? I thought Christians were all weird, because they were. But then they know you. And maybe I haven't helped, but now they've met two of us, and maybe they're thinking, do you know what? Maybe they're not. Maybe I thought Christians were weird, but actually you seem okay, and so did that. I'm not sure what to do with this. That doesn't compute. And then at church next week, you hear about a quiz night here on the 4th of March, on a Saturday night. It's not very churchy, is it? But a quiz on a Saturday night. And you think, my mate Jay would love that. They'd love to come to something like that. They love a quiz. They just love like hanging out with people. And then you decide, actually, do you know what? Before I'm inviting them to the quiz, I'm just going to invite a few people to hang out another weekend. Like sometime in February, maybe we'll watch the sport on TV, or maybe we'll go for a walk, or maybe we'll play some games or something like that. And so you invite Jay and their partner, and you invite a couple of people from church who you know are also like into the same kind of things. You invite a few people from work, and like you hang out. And it's just quite light blue. Because like you're there and your other Christian friends are there, but actually like God's in the midst of this stuff. And then you think, well, actually Jay's had a really nice evening with us, and now they know a few of my other Christian friends. Why don't we make a team? And then you think, I'm going to invite Jay and his partner to the quiz, or her partner to the quiz. And maybe they're thinking something like a church quiz. It's going to be like a round on the Bible. But you know that it's going to be a Life Church thing. And so you think, no, it's going to be on a Saturday night, and there's not going to be a Bible round, and it's going to be like a normal quiz, and no one's going to stand up and preach the gospel, and everyone's just going to be like as normally weird as they normally are, but I'm okay with that. Because we're all weird. You know that, right? You're all completely different to me, and that's okay. And now Jay's thinking, I actually had an all right time. And now Jay's been in your church building. And it's like only one step from there to in here. And Jay's thinking, that was all right. Didn't feel like there was a big in crowd, and loads of other people have brought their mates too, so it didn't feel like I was the only visitor. So eventually Jay maybe comes along to a whole load of these light blue events over like a whole year maybe. And they let you know that they've actually been thinking about stuff, and they maybe actually even want to come to church with you, and they're maybe thinking things like, well, I wonder if church is actually just like that funeral I went to. Is it like that every week? Or is church like that wedding, or that christening? Or when I used to go and that vicar used to like sing on his own at the front? Or is it just Bible stories? Are there puppets still? Like there was puppets when I was at school. And Jay's thinking. And then you remember on the 12th of March, or one of several other Sundays over the year at Cares, you clock that it's going to be one of our all-in Sundays. Which you might be thinking, oh, what? And that's brand new because I've just told you, but I've like surreptitiously snuck it into a story. So I'm telling you stuff at the same time as you're like helping us. It's an all-in Sunday. And it's not all in because like the kids are all in or anything different like that. It's because actually we're all in. And like everyone has thought about, I could probably bring someone to an all-in kind of Sunday. And you know that me and the team here and everyone in the church wants us to feel really confident that we're bringing that friend to church. Maybe it's Jay, maybe it's a whole bunch of others. But that they're going to be met by an incredible welcome by our wonderful welcome team. You're going to know that on that all-in church Sunday, the worship team are going to have thought carefully, like they do every week, about the songs that we're singing and made sure that they're all about Jesus and they're like really clear about the gospel. And it does something in people's hearts when we sing stuff like that. And then you know that one of the preachers, which will either be Si or Dave or Chris, and then it's people you know, and half the time they do a decent job. And so you think, well, all right, I'm going to invite Jay to church. And you know, and you'll be really aware actually, that lots of other people around church will also be thinking about this on that particular Sunday. So you know it's unlikely that they'll be the only person in the room who's a visitor, which actually happens every single Sunday, by the way. We have visitors every single Sunday at Life Church. Gosh. We're sorting out kids going to the right rooms. And so Jay thinks, well, do you know what? That was better than I thought, actually. I might even come back. Maybe another week, I'll come to another one of these. And maybe Jay's thinking something like, do you know what, that's really given me some stuff to think about. Or I've got some questions I would love to talk through with you. There's things that I need to work out here. And suddenly you realize that just by having friends, by doing the stuff that you like, with the friends that you like, in the places that you generally go to anyway, with all the other people who happen to be there, you're doing evangelism. And you're changing people's lives around you. You see, you're sharing the good news of Jesus, but you're doing it with your team. You're doing it with us. And we're all in it together. We're not going to sing High School Musical. I know, Chris has been practicing though, so if you twist his arm, you never know. But we're all in it together. And actually, you feel instead of it like all your evangelism being personally down to you, taking them from knowing nothing about God through all the way to like on their knees, wailing in repentance, what must I do to be saved? Like, you took them to a quiz. And then you invited them along to something else, and the people around you helped you. And then you brought them here, and someone else preached the gospel, and we worked together. You see, in Christianese, this is our evangelistic strategy. But it's just surfing. It's just being in the water and looking for the next wave that God might want us to catch. See, our evangelistic strategy looks a lot like you hanging out with your friends, doing things you really like doing, or making new friends, doing the things that you happen to like doing with them, with other people. And then it's like doing the kind of things that you really love doing, like the shopping or the school run. Those things that, are just super high on your agenda. And it's inviting them to all the other stuff that we're also already doing, like church. And you see, we can bring a shade of blue to each of these things. But the bottom line, our evangelistic strategy is this. It's you. It's the church. It's all of us doing our normal stuff, following Jesus, and it will change lives. Do you believe that? Because I do. It will change people's lives. We see it in this bit with Paul, don't we? Dionysius, Damaris, a number of others. Because Paul happened to be there. And you happen to be in all sorts of places. It is you doing your thing with all of us doing our thing while God does his thing. See, everyone starts out in the lightest blue, but once you get a taste, once your friends get a taste for riding a wave, once your friends get a taste and they see that it is good, something draws them closer. And they don't stay in the light blue shallows for long, and you find yourself being drawn out into the deeper blue. You even have this strange longing in you for some reason to be just completely out of your depth, where your feet no longer touch the bottom. And just as sure as the waves are going to rise in white crests and break on the shoreline, Jesus is doing his thing in people's lives around you. And we can trust him. You see, church on a Sunday morning like this is a blue place, right? There should be moments of like deep, dark blue because God is here. And he breaks into this world that we find ourselves in, and he meets with us. And we should never, ever put him in a box and try and get God to behave the way we want him to because we've invited our friends. Because that is the power of God at work. And if we try and box him in, then we've made an idol out of the God of the Bible, and that is a dangerous place for us to be. You see, we are very okay with things being the very deepest shade of blue when God's in charge. But you see, God can do whatever he likes here, and we invite him to do exactly that every single week. And it's always a risk, isn't it, to say to a room full of people, why don't you come down? If you feel like God's spoken to you, come and share it with one of the elders, and then we'll get you to tell everybody. What? That's insane. But it's only insane if God doesn't exist. It's only insane if God isn't actually doing stuff in us and speaking to us and through us. See, anything could happen, couldn't it? But then again, like anything could happen. Anything could happen in your life and in God's life. See, we also, though, want to make sure our Sundays are light blue where they should be light blue. So like our tea and coffee team out there, don't like do a little secret handshake and whisper a secret Bible verse in people's ears when you give them a tea and coffee. That's like, we just be normal people. And it's intentionally light blue, but we're being kind. And people go, oh, that was nice, thank you. I'm assuming that's not what happens, right, Helen? Yeah, okay. I don't do tea and coffee, so, I can't be quite sure. But if we are, could we stop that? It's weird. But also, like, you'll notice that when we share the vision slot here, like we say it in English, in plain English, like we don't say it in tongues and then wait for an interpretation so that someone knows what's happening next Thursday. We make it really accessible to everybody because we're thinking about your friends. We're thinking about people who are coming in here going, I've never been to something like this. And the stuff that's light blue should be light blue, and the stuff that is dark blue should be dark blue because God is doing it. You see, we've got a site team here at Kes who help us to think about these sorts of things that make this the kind of place that we want to invite our friends to, and that your friends then want to invite their friends to. So it's me and my wife, Jo, it's Alex and Charlotte Walker, Jen, who's not here this morning, James Nestor Hatcher, and Min McNee. And the point of this team is for us to be thinking about what we're doing here. Like how we can make this a place that is dark blue in the right places, light blue in the right places, that God might do something in our midst. And so if you've got thoughts or questions, or you want to get involved more, or you want to know how you can pray, or you need help, or if you just want to hand over large amounts of cash, not that one. That was for a different thing. But you can speak to these guys. I've asked them to help me to lead all of this because we're on a team. We're all part of this. And so speak to them, because honestly, if it was just down to me, we'd all be in a lot of trouble. But it's not. We do stuff as a team. So look, here's what I'm saying. You're already out in the water. You already live in the world, right? And you've probably got some friends there. And if you haven't, you can go and make some friends there. You can do stuff with them just by being you that makes it light blue. You can offer to pray for them. You can read the conditions, and you can look for a moment in friends' lives when you might just be able to say, hey, do you want to talk about that? Or do you want to come with me? Do you want to come and see this? You can invite them to something. You can invite them to something fun first. Or if you feel like they're ready, invite them to church. This is a great place to be. Invite them to an all-in Sunday. The first one is the 12th of March, and it'll be just like a normal Life Church Sunday. Okay? It's going to be normal. But we'll all be bringing all of our mates, so yours won't be on their own. And then we can see what God does when we ask him if he might just want us to change the city like Paul did in Athens. See, when we share about Jesus, some will move from being sneerers, or at least give them the chance to sneer at something. And they'll move from being a sneerer to maybe even hearing it. And they'll move from then being a hearer to coming nearer. The heading for this section in lots of Bibles is Paul in Athens. I want you to just imagine for a moment that God has chosen you for this time in this place to just write yourself through his power into a chapter in the history of what God is doing in the world. And it's Rich in Southampton. It's Peter in Southampton. It's Mike in Southampton. It's Judith in Southampton. And there's a whole chapter of stuff that God has got for you to do because he's pre-planned it. He's got places for you to be, people for you to reach, things for you to invite people to, and it will change the world. Why don't we stand together? I'm going to pray for us. And then the band is going to come up and we're going to sing. Heavenly Father, I thank you that just as the waves are rolling in on the coastlines around this country, you are at work. And we can be sure of it, that you are doing a good thing in people's lives all around us, all those who we happen to be near. And Lord Jesus, we want to pray that you will turn our city to you. One life at a time. A Dionysius and a Damaris and a number of others. Lord Jesus, that in this next year, we will see lives transformed as we bring your life to every community. Lord Jesus, that you would help us to step into the chapter that you are writing for our lives, that it would be me in Southampton doing what God has planned for me to do, and that I might walk in that stuff. Jesus, I want to pray for this church that you will fill us with your Holy Spirit right now, that we might go out in power to go and see lives transformed as we go about our daily lives. Lord, I want to pray for that Sunday, the 12th of March, that will be a marker for us, that will set something in the culture, that will set something in the way we do stuff as a church that means that we will have many coming in. And that as they're confronted with the gospel, you will do what only you can do. And that you will change lives. Jesus, we pray for those, every single person that popped into our heads as we just thought about them not yet knowing you. Would you save them? Would you step down? Would you rescue them from following dead idols that will make their lives a misery and bring them to freedom in you, who offers us life in all of its fullness? Jesus, we're here for you. Would you start with us in this place? In your name. Amen.